What's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Wow. So today we are back going to be talking about Survivor season 45, episode 11. So my name is Rachel.
I'm Alyssa. This episode was, I think, a pretty solid episode. We got some nice character backstory. We got a great vote. We had some drama. It was all sprinkled with different kinds of the things that we love about Survivor. So, pretty good episode, even if I was not a super big fan of how it turned out. So, going to be a lot of fun talking about it.
There were a lot of moving parts this episode. Like, it's very tricky from every very fascinating vote, I feel like. I went into this episode because I didn't watch it live. I was like, okay, let me avoid Reddit. No self-control. I was on Reddit, so then I was like, let me just not click on these Survivor ones. But I feel like even the titles for the posts can be a little spoilery. And then the posts are like, I'm so sad. I'm not rooting for anyone anymore. I've got no one left to root for. So I went into this episode thinking Austin was getting voted out.
That's interesting because I feel like I have not seen anyone like vocally rooting for Austin. And I feel like if I saw the title, like, oh, I don't have anyone to root for anymore, I would assume that Emily was going home because,
Interesting. I guess,
like, I
yeah, it was
feel like
like
she's the one who has the most, like, fans, I would say.
a mix of people saying like, "Oh, like bad move." So I was like, "Oh, he's getting idled out or something." And I'm so sad. I'm like, "Oh, okay. People are sad he's getting idled out this episode. Dang."
Yeah, I feel like my biggest gripe with this episode is like editing wise. I feel like there was some stuff that I would have liked to see like come up earlier. And yeah, it was a mess. So
So we start off this episode after tribal council, dark nighttime scene, and Emily basically takes credit for Bruce being blindsided. Everyone is chit-chatting. They're so excited. Oh my gosh, Bruce got voted out finally. He didn't play his idol. He should have maybe played his idol. And Emily takes credit for it, which I'm like, dang. I feel like you probably should have kept this a secret and not told everyone happened and tried to explain why Bruce played the idol and just sort of played coy, like, that's so weird. Well, I don't know why he would do that. Like, that's wild. But in exit interviews, she does say that this was a misplay. So she does realize it. And she was saying, like, okay, yeah, reflecting on it, sharing this information came from a place of insecurity about her own game.
yeah, I think it's difficult because you might kind of you want to get credit for it eventually because you do want to be able, like, if you get to the final three, to say like I was the one who convinced Bruce not to play his idol. So I think, yeah, definitely a misplay on Emily's part. I feel like there's a lot of ways you could have been like, oh, we all did such a good job making him feel comfortable. So
And then maybe at Final Tribal, yeah, bring it up and no, actually, I've been lying, or actually, I was the one that convinced Bruce not to play the idol, or even just hope that Bruce is going to the jury saying your praises. Like, yeah, I was tricked when people are asking him, why didn't you play the idol? He might be bringing up, yeah, Emily tricked me. She did a good job. She told me I was safe, and I believed it, kind of thing. But because she took credit for this, everyone else we're seeing is realizing and they're giving her credit and kudos for the massive play, the massive blindside. People in confessionals are saying, okay, her threat is going up. She came up with this entire plan on her own. And they're like, okay, we need to target Emily now.
yeah, so that was something that I feel like when the episode started with everyone being like, Emily's such a threat, I was kind of like, oh, maybe she won't go home. Because I feel like one of the things that Survivor editors do a lot is they set up like the easy, obvious vote at the beginning of the episode. Like the first episode that Bruce won his immunity, everyone was like, okay, Bruce is going home. And then Bruce wins his immunity. And it's like, oh, this easy plan that we had set up in the first half of the episode isn't going to be the plan. And so I guess moving forward, when they had the journey that Emily got to go on, I was like, oh, she's going to win immunity on the journey. And then everyone else is going to have to figure out something else to do. But we know that's not what happened. But that was kind of where my brain was going. So I think we sometimes complain a lot about the editing being predictable. But I feel like this was a time when the editors kind of played their normal story differently. So instead of being like, oh, here's an easy vote out, haha, they're not actually getting voted out. They were like, here's an easy vote out. And then at the end, the person who was the easy vote out actually was the one who got voted.
Yeah, now it's interesting. It feels like if someone gets personal content the week before, then maybe they're going home the week after. Like we saw Emily getting that personal content last week at the Letters from Home, which, okay, you could say Letters from Home, you're going to get personal content there. And then she goes here, but also similar to Kendra getting the story about her family at the auction, then going home the next episode. Stuff like that is coming up more and more often. So maybe that's their new editing ploy to trick us.
If that's the case, then Katura is out next week because we got to hear some of Katura's backstory this episode, and yeah. So if she goes home next week, it's going to be big check mark confirmed. You're no longer going home the episode that you like open up about your tragic backstory, but the next episode. That's when you get the boot.
Yep. So we see some of Dee and Austin showmancing ish, flirtmancing. Very, very cute. I agree with Austin. I'm like, okay, I low key want the Rob and Amber. I'm like, I want to be proposed to on the family visit. So I think they need to bring the family visit back.
The thing is, I was just kind of like, I feel like the Dee and Austin showmance was not developed very much. Like they were allies and they like kind of flirted in an episode earlier in the season. But I feel like to go from like, oh, they're allies who like seem to like each other to like we want to be Rob and Amber 2.0. I was like, hold up. Just because I feel like Rob and Amber All Stars was kind of about their love story. So it felt very natural at the end when Rob proposed. If like Austin proposes to Dee at their not a reunion, I'm going to be like, what the fuck? So.
Yo, especially because that's Oling after 26 days and not like, okay, at least, maybe
At
half a
least it was
year.
like 6 months.
Yeah. That'd be a little bit wild. So it's cute. I am always like, when people are like, if I don't win, I want that person to win. I don't know if I would go that far in, 20 days, but the sentiment is there.
Yeah, it was interesting because one of my friends follows another Survivor fan on Twitter. And when I mentioned Survivor, he was like, okay, I need you to explain this to me. And I like had to go through the backstory of like who Rob and Amber were and who Austin and Dee were and like what was going on. Cause he was like, I'm so confused. So my friends learn some Survivor lore every time they talk to me.
That's good. You're helping people out, teaching them.
Yeah.
So we also learned that Austin let Julie hold on to the idol. I think this is a question Alyssa and I had after that split vote when Austin did give Julie the idol. Like, okay, did he get it back? Is she still holding on to it? We didn't have any confirmation of that until now, which I was like, dang, that is an interesting, probably a misplay on Austin and Drew's part. Like, okay, after the split tribal council, when you were worried Julie might get voted out because of the numbers, stuff like that, like, why not ask for the idol back the day after? Why would you let someone hold on to your idol, which is freaking wild that now you have to flush your own idol and you gave her the better idol because that's the real idol that lasts until final 5 and you kept the weaker amulet idol that only lasts until final 6 for yourself. It seems like a little bit of a misplay. Like, I agree. Now, days later, it'd be very awkward to try to ask for it back, but why didn't you try asking the day after?
Yeah. I wonder if part of it is he just didn't consider the fact that he and Julie might not be on the same side because they've been so strong, like Reba 4, Reba 4, Reba 4. And I feel like asking for the idol back after giving it, it would always send up red flags. So maybe the misplay was giving Julie the idol in the first place.
It's hard too, right? Like, is there too much trust here, like you're saying, that you're allowing your teammate to just hold on to this idol? I would say it's also hard because they probably know he has the amulet idol, so they know Austin has 2 idols. So if you asked for it back, if I were Julie, I'd be like, yo, you already have one. Why can't like me and Dee hold on to this one? Like the girls have one and the guys have one here. Why do you need to hold on to two? That's a little bit like controlling. So maybe too much trust that they all know about everyone else's stuff here. But dang, to give someone else your better idol that lasts longer and you have to flush it, that just sucks because he could have had one idol for 6 and one idol for 5.
Yeah, but I mean, you gotta live with the consequences of the choices that you made. And I feel like Austin misplayed like a lot this episode. So yeah, we'll have to talk about him more going forward.
So we also see the 3 lawyers talking, but they don't know that the 3 of them are lawyers. Katura and Jake say that they want to work together for the next couple of votes. Finally, Bello is realizing, yo, we got to stick together. Hopefully, whatever they're saying, the apple cards are going to fall differently now. I thought at this point, Katura was maybe going to reveal that she was a lawyer as well. I need to see this in the reunion that Jeff says something like, oh, did anyone lie about their jobs and wants to share? And then everyone shares. I want to see Jake's reaction that they were all
Yeah,
lawyers.
when Katura was like, if you don't tell your story, it might never get told because you don't know like when you're going home. I was like, oh, she's gonna say that she's a lawyer, and then she like talked about her like backstory instead, and I was like, this was not what I was expecting, and it's like so much more heartbreaking than I was expecting because I was just expecting her to be like, oh yeah, I'm a lawyer, but then she talked about like everything that led up to her being a lawyer. And I was like, damn, I have so much respect for Katura.
Yeah, like this episode really gives a lot of background information into the family notes last week when Katura was talking about no contact and just how her whole life is one sad story. And we mentioned it in last week's podcast. Like, yeah, she didn't go into what this whole sad story meant, and that's up to her. She doesn't have to share on national television, kind of thing. And so to hear it this week definitely gives a lot more context, I think, to what we saw last week. And just Katura is so inspiring and very cool, and she seems like an amazing person.
Yeah, I feel like I don't agree with a lot of the choices Katura made in the game of Survivor, but like if we were to like go out for drinks together, I feel like we'd have a great time. So
Yeah, so glad that she got to share that story. I guess it's something that she wants to share on national television because she's the one that brought it up. So I'm glad that she had that space to do so and it wasn't like forced upon her at like the reunion or by Jeff or someone like that.
yeah.
So then a boat comes and it's another island trip. Of course, final 7, everyone wants to go because everyone knows there could be advantages, other things there. And so they have to draw rocks. Makes sense here. Emily gets the green rock, so she gets to go onto the journey. And this journey, it's you have to do that rope puzzle that we saw from episode 1 in the Sweat versus Savvy challenge earlier this season that the 2 teams failed at. And if you solve it here, you are safe for this vote. If you lose your vote at this next tribal council. For Emily, I feel like, okay, I guess it's good that she chose not to do it because we've seen, like with puzzles last week, not very good under pressure timed puzzle when she had to do that math problem solve. She might need her vote at the final 7, like 7 people left. This is a pivotal time. It's important to keep your vote. Um, and so if she thinks she can't do it, I think it's smarter here not to do the puzzle and play it safe.
I also feel like if 2 people working together couldn't figure it out on day 1, I on day like 20 whatever that they're at would not be very confident in my ability to figure it out on my own because it's like day 1 you have fuel in the tank, you're like thinking more clearly, you haven't been sleep deprived and food deprived for like 3 weeks, and just if you can't figure it out on day 1, I feel like trying to figure it out on day 20 something, not a good idea.
Yeah, and your vote is so important. I feel like her, mistakes this episode, I wouldn't say that her not risking it here to do the puzzle is a mistake this episode.
Yeah, I would say almost the opposite because I feel like there were definitely ways that this could have swung to be a 4-3 vote against Julie rather than being what it ended up being.
I agree. I think keeping her vote here is more important, so not a bad move. Good for Emily for playing it safe here, I think.
Yeah. I think the thing that was kind of like maybe not a bad move by her, but just something that's kind of inevitable is that she went back. She told people the truth. She was like, yeah, there was this thing. I decided not to play. It's like, no one's going to believe you when you say that you decided not to play. And I feel like Emily said something like, oh, I'm going to use my Emily bluntness and my Emily honesty. And it's kind of like, maybe that would have worked on like day 2 when everyone thought that you were old Emily. But now everyone sees that you're like savvy and smart and able to lie because you literally just told them that you were instrumental in getting Bruce blindsided. So it's like, I don't think that she had the correct read when she was like, oh, if I just tell everyone the truth, it'll be fine.
Sort of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. Because, like, with all of these journeys, especially when you're the only person corroborating the story, even if you are telling the truth, people are probably going to think you're sketchy. People are probably going to think you're lying. So, even though she didn't get any advantages here, inevitably, I feel like someone's going to be like, nah, she's lying.
Yeah, it's just the way of the game, I feel like. So
Hmm.
some people take that to mean like, oh, anytime I go on a journey, I should at least try to do something because people are going to assume that I have something anyway. But
Yeah, so we get to the immunity challenge. You have to collect enough rope, like untangling it, to do the length of the entire course. For me, watching this, I'm like, For me, it probably makes the most sense to get like a ton of rope and then try because it seems like people that kept on missing the length and coming up short, it seemed very difficult because then with the rope management, you have to hold this heavy rope and go back and forth. And then, like, the tangling or potential tangling of the rope seems like it would be very stressful and difficult to do. I'd just like overestimate the amount of rope and hopefully maybe you only have to go back once and redo it. But like going back 2 or 3 times seems like a huge pain in the butt.
one thing that I was thinking about also is like there were times where it was like, oh, if you can't reach your sandbags, and I'm like, does Drew have an advantage in this challenge because he has long ass arms and like someone like Julie might need like an extra foot of rope to be able to reach where Drew can reach just using his arms because he's like a long, gangly guy. Like, what's the truth?
True. He's like at least 6'5", 6'7", something really tall, he said.
Yeah, so like his wingspan is huge. So
Maybe,
thinking
maybe you're right. Like with the unfairness of challenges we've talked about, maybe he's super tall. He can really reach, and maybe that's why he got the rope on the first try.
maybe
So then with the rope management, you have to knock sandbags and do a word puzzle. I was confused like Austin here. I was like, how do the blocks work forward and backwards like this? Because he spelled it correctly on the front. And so I was like, okay, there's maybe repeat letters that the front and the back, it depends on where you put the letters. That makes the backwards version look correct. I was like, yo, I
yeah,
was confused
because
too.
so the word resourcefulness, there's 2 R's, there's 3 E's, there's 3 S's, there's 2 U's, so like there's multiples of every letter. So, or not every letter, but there's multiples of several letters. So I feel like it's, yeah. The thing that
Yeah.
got me with Austin is Jeff kept saying it has to be right on both sides. It has to be right. And Austin was just looking at his one side, like, is it spelled right? So yeah.
His face was so funny there because he was staring at it like, "This looks like it's spelled correctly," but then the back was complete gibberish, and I'm like, "Am I having a brain issue? Because the back is, like, not a word." It was so weird to watch.
Yeah. So you were not having a brain issue. Austin was the one having a brain issue. I thought it was funny. He was like, I couldn't get it. Because when you're, I guess that sleep deprived and food deprived, you're kind of not thinking like, oh, him saying both sides has to be correct means that he wants me to go to the other side and fix it. Like, you just don't get it. So
Yeah, it was not computing for Austin, but good for Drew. Probably a dream to win immunity, as it is probably a dream for everyone on Survivor. You get that nice new Facebook profile picture of Jeff putting the necklace on you. Instant would be my background on everything if that ever happened to me. And they also get to do a little reward, and Drew picks Jake and Austin. Jake because he has been the longest since he got in a reward, and then Austin because it's guys night 2.0. Drew, I think his picks are smart. Just do what Emily did last week, but do it with the men, because people can't be mad that he didn't pick any women because they just got that huge feast last week and all the men missed the reward last week.
I feel like in a way this was a bad choice though because of the tension between Julie and the other like Reba 4 members. I feel like maybe keeping Julie closer to you would have been helpful, but
Yeah, maybe. But then I could also see it's like when the women were back at camp, it was so awkward. Like they had nothing to talk about. They were just talking about their buffs because it was very open knowledge that, okay, we're targeting Emily. Some of us are targeting Julie. We really have nothing to talk about because it would be fake conversation since we're targeting each other here. So maybe Drew was thinking of that as well. Like, okay, the women back at camp, low key dysfunctional. And maybe he believes in his relationships, like his side alliance with Emily and the Reba foursome. Like they're not maybe going to create a coup against one of the men by leaving all the women back at camp.
so a coup almost did happen, but not because they left all of the women together. So
Yeah. Drew at this reward, he's trying to fix his relationship with Jake after their little spat last week. I thought this was cute. I was like, okay, the men aren't fighting anymore. Great. Jake had a fun confessional saying, oh, I was an extra in the past few votes. I'm sick of playing in a tree. Now I'm a supporting role. I can see it.
I thought that was cute too, because he didn't even be like, now I'm the main character. He was like, now I'm at least a supporting role. So
Yeah. The trees don't get any lines. Maybe now he gets a speaking part. One line.
yeah. He gets like 2 lines, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A credit in the little pamphlets you pick up.
Exactly.
So, after all of this, it gets into the tricky situations because Drew really wants to vote Julie out. He is talking with Austin about it. Austin's more like, "No, I would prefer to vote Emily and then Julie next week." And so, this puts Austin in a sticky spot because he's like, "Okay, do I tell D or do I not tell D?" Another damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, I feel like, for a lot of the players this episode, because here, if Austin doesn't tell D and they do blindside Julie, if I were D, I'd be like, total WTF. Trust is broken. Maybe she's really, really mad at you. And maybe you could say, okay, after Julie's gone, D doesn't really have anyone else. So she's forced to work with Austin and Drew even more so now. But you never know how people could react. She could be totally pissed and be like, heck no, I'm going to go and try to work with Katura and Jake or something now. And then if you do tell D, now it's like, okay, you can't vote Julie out like we saw this episode, but maybe you change the plan and then maybe everyone communicated here to get the vote on Emily.
The thing is, I feel like Austin did this in the worst way possible because he didn't actually tell Julie himself. So now he still has someone pissed off at him. Like, if he had voted Julie out without telling D, D would have been pissed off at him. But he told D, who told Julie, so now Julie is pissed off at him. And so I feel like there is a way where this would have worked out for Austin. And I feel like not telling D, he has more maneuvering room because if you vote out Julie, maybe D doesn't like need to work with you. Maybe she does try to work with other people. But if you have already like solidified, like starting a new relationship with Jake, starting a new relationship with Emily, starting a new relationship with Katura, like I feel like Austin would have more maneuverability than D after voting Julie out because he does have that alliance that he already has with Emily. He has started working with Jake. Whereas D, I feel like we have only really been shown her working with the Reba 4. And so while it's great that she is super strong with her foursome, I feel like she would be more have a more difficult time creating new alliances when her number one is cut.
I agree with that. I think, like, if they did cut Julie and blindsided her this episode, I think Dee is more on an island and she's sort of forced into working with Austin and Drew still, even if she is super angry at them for blindsiding her. Because, like, we've seen multiple episodes, it's like Katura wants either Dee or Julie out. Emily thinks Dee and Julie are threats. Like, I agree with you. I think it'd be a lot harder for Dee to like ingratiate herself with other people because people view her as such a big threat because she's very intelligent and she's good at challenges. I do hope we see next week like I think Dee gets a lot of credit this episode with Julie, even though Julie does play the idol and negates all of these votes. I feel like from what we've seen this episode, Dee is the person that convinced Julie not to do the emotional route and vote Austin out, and she convinced her to vote Emily out. And hopefully, maybe we see some flashbacks of this next week, like Dee telling Julie, yeah, next week we're going to fake hate each other. So it seems like maybe the Reba 4 talked, or maybe just Dee and Julie talked and Dee convinced her all of these things. But it seems like they're going to fake it next week and pretend like they're not a foursome to trick people. And maybe Austin knew that Julie was going to vote Emily because he didn't play the idol this week. So I would like to see some more fleshing out of this next week. Like, were the entire Reba 4 in on this plan of voting Emily out and like using the idol in this tricky way? Or was it really just Dee convincing Julie not to do the emotional move here?
You see, I think it's interesting because you're talking about the emotional move, but like the emotional move for Austin was to tell Dee, and the emotional move for Dee was to tell Julie. So I guess I'm kind of confused. Like, is the emotional move supposed to be the good thing, or is it supposed to be the bad thing? Because I feel kind of like they were positioning the emotional move as the bad thing, with like Dee telling, or with Austin telling Dee, and then Dee telling Julie. So I feel like Dee did make an emotional move by telling Julie that she was going to get voted out. And so if it's like emotional moves are bad, then Dee did make an emotional move that might have been portrayed as bad. So
Yeah, I guess I wasn't necessarily thinking when I say emotional move, I'm just saying it as like Julie voting Emily out and not voting Austin out because I feel like we've seen Julie be sort of emotional, sort of like revengeful, which I'm also surprised why she didn't want to vote Jake out here because every episode she's like, I don't like Jake. I want to vote Jake out because he wrote my name. So for me, saying emotional move, I'm more like, okay, Julie voting the way she did and not voting Austin out.
yeah, I mean, I think Julie voting Emily out also probably secured her Emily's jury vote if Emily, or if she does make it to the final three. Because Emily said, I'm going to vote for the person who played the best game. And it sounds like Julie, being the one person to vote Emily out, is the one who played the best game. So I'm interested to see, like, if Julie does make the final three, how does this move specifically like play out for her? And does Dee try to take credit for the fact that she like convinced Julie to vote for Emily instead of Austin? Like, that seems like it's gonna come back up.
Yeah, and I feel like for Dee here, she's in a tricky spot similar to Austin. Like, do you tell Julie? Do you not tell Julie? I feel like in this situation, you sort of maybe have to tell Julie, like, Dee could have went along with Austin and Drew and the others and just blindsided Julie. But I think maybe by telling her and creating this fake plan to hate each other next week, it could be good for them in the long run, especially because now people are seeing Julie as more threatening than Dee. Before, people used to see Dee as more threatening than Julie and this like woman duo alliance here. So I think it could be good. Like, you are making Julie's threat level way higher than you because of this successful idol play. And then maybe you try to take credit for it after the fact at a final tribal council or something like that. But now it's like Julie is definitely going to be the person getting the votes if they're maybe trying to split votes between Julie or Dee, or if you had to pick between the women, people would want to vote Julie out first.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting because I feel like you could still spin Julie voting for Austin as like a logical move because Dee calls both of them her number ones, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
you do realize that there's only one number one, and I feel like Julie, if she had voted for Austin, could have solidified herself as like, I am Dee's number one. Like, Dee doesn't have Austin to fall back on now. So I feel like that's definitely going to be something that comes back up. Like, if Dee is put
Yeah,
in another situation.
for Julie too. Like, do you vote for Austin or do you vote for Emily? It's a difficult thing for her to have to battle too. And like we see Julie talking with Jake and Emily about the potential of voting Austin out, but then Julie says like, yeah, these guys aren't willing to make a move. They're just going to go with the numbers. And so whoever I write down is going to go home. And so maybe this is like a misplay again from Emily and potentially Jake and Katura, like not even mentioning splitting the votes, especially because if everyone else is thinking, hey, it's going to be 6 on Julie, no one besides the Reba 4 knows that she has Austin's idol. But, you know, Bruce had an idol last week, didn't play it. Maybe you're thinking there's more advantages out there. Maybe you just try to split the votes. So I would want to see maybe a flashback next week. Drew and Austin, if they know what's going on and they know that Julie is voting Emily, they're going to convince Jake, Emily, Katura not to split the votes and try to placate everyone like, yo, it's all chill. There's probably no idols, or we know she doesn't have one. So let's just put all 6 votes on her. And maybe that's why we didn't see anyone say split the votes, because they convinced everyone not to split the votes. Like, I'd want to see some background info here.
The thing is, I feel like one thing that we as the audience forget a lot is that every time they're voting, there's like 600 plans. Like, they show us the plans that end up like being important, but every time they go for a vote, I feel like every person's name is pitched at least once. Like, what if we tried voting for this person? What if? And so I feel like this could have been just like a conversation and not something that Julie seriously pursued or something that people seriously thought she wanted, because everyone's name gets thrown around. There's always tons of different plans that are pitched, even if none of them are followed through on. So I feel like to say it's a misplay from like Jake, Emily, Katura is kind of, yeah, just because it could also just be Julie trying to get the heat off her own back. It could be Julie trying, like, there's a ton of different reasons that Julie would have pitched this to them that aren't like, oh, Julie's going to play an idol, so we should split the votes. So I feel like I do not necessarily feel like it was a misplay on their part.
You wouldn't think, if you know the vote is going to be 6-1, that you wouldn't want to maybe split the votes like 3-3-1 or something, or 4-2-1.
I mean, I think that part of it is a misplay, but I think that's specifically saying, oh, they should have gone with Julie to vote for Austin is not a
Oh,
misplay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'm saying the not bringing up splitting votes is the misplay.
Yeah, I would feel like that's probably true.
Yeah, Emily in the exit interview, she was saying that, like, they had a conversation with Austin and sort of his idol got brought up, and, like, Emily was like, "Okay, maybe he would play it for me, maybe he'd play it for himself," because they were saying, like, if Julie played her idol, Austin, they knew he had an idol, so the question was, okay, would he play it for Emily or would he play it for myself? So it's like you could see Drew and Austin maybe taking credit here too, of like, okay, we knew that Emily was going to get the stray vote, so we placated everyone to not split the votes here, and we let Emily go to like keep Julie around, kind of thing. Like, I would want more information about this, because it is like a lot of moving parts, and I think it's very interesting and tricky from like everyone's point of view here.
From my perspective, if I was sitting on the jury and Austin or Drew said, like, oh, we knew Emily was going to get the stray vote, so we decided to, I would be like, that is bull. So I feel like that would be a very difficult case to make, at least if I were sitting on the jury. Maybe the actual jury members would have a different opinion, but that to me just seems like trying to take credit for something that you do not actually get credit for.
Yeah, perception is reality, I guess. So we get to tribal council. I fear that the Reba 4, they are letting Julie get so much credit here. It's a freaking massive idol play where she gets all of the votes and her single vote gets to vote someone out of this game. Like, this is going to give her a lot of clout, which is funny because earlier in the episode, Drew asks her if she wants to do something fun and tricky with the idol to get more resume points, and Julie straight up says no. Like, can they either have to vote her out now for sure, or if she somehow makes final tribal council, you have to like undercut her in a way, and maybe they're like, yeah, this is actually my idol, this is Austin's idol, we told Dee, we planned all of this. It's like you can't let Julie get to the end now because she has this massive idol play under her belt. And in the jury's eyes, they were like, holy crap. And they were like, when did she find this thing? They're giving her a lot of credit.
Yeah, I feel like maybe they're banking on the fact that that's going to make her the target, but I don't know.
Yeah, like with the perception is reality. I don't know, saying later, yeah, this was my idol, me, Austin's idol, I gave it to her. Maybe people think that's a misplay. Like, why would you flush your own idol, or why wouldn't you try to get it back? And they're still giving Julie this credit. Like, Julie, stole this idol from someone else and she played it to save herself. Like, that is huge.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you were like, oh, this is actually my idol that Julie played, that would not make me think highly of you. That would make me think more highly of Julie, because I'd be like, oh, so you trusted the wrong person and Julie convinced you to give her an idol and then used it to save herself and you didn't do anything about it. Like,
Yeah, like they're giving Julie so much credit and like rah rah in front of the jury. It's so freaking dangerous. It'd be different if Austin had both idols and he stood up and it was his move. Like, I'm using one of my idols to play it on Julie, similar to, like a Jeremy or Stephen Fishback, like where someone plays their idol for someone else. That would give Austin more credit. Like, yeah, I saved you, Julie, da da da. But now it's like Julie is getting all the credit and perception is reality. I'm like, you got to vote Julie out now for sure.
yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how they go about actually, you know, getting rid of Julie. Or if they don't get rid of Julie and she ends up being the winner.
True. That would be very interesting. I think Dee is doing very, very well. Each episode, we see her say a name, and then that person ends up going home. I do wonder if the jury is annoyed with Drew. Like when Jeff says, oh, this is the shortest amount of time you've ever talked to Drew. Can you elaborate more? And then Drew goes into this long metaphor thing. We see Kelly like visibly pulling her eyes down and like rolling her eyes. So I wonder if people don't really like Drew.
I mean, it seems like Drew kind of has a reputation for being kind of cocky. So I would not be surprised if people did not like Drew. So
So it could be interesting if it's like Drew and Austin in the end with someone else, if Austin's way more likable than Drew and Drew is just very verbose and arrogant kind of thing. That could be very interesting. I thought the voting confessionals here were fun, like back-to-back shortcuts of everyone going up, writing Julie's name down and then saying something super quickly. I thought that was fun, but sad for Emily getting voted out. I hope she comes back.
I hope she comes back too, just because I feel like she was a great character. She had a really great arc. I just like, yeah, it's sad to see her go, especially getting idled out.
And so next week, it's not the finale. The finale is in 2 weeks on December 20th, very, very close to all the holidays. But I feel like, just in general, for me, I think it makes sense to keep the Reba 4 intact here because going into next time, it's a 4-2 split, 4 Rebas, 2 Bellas. Because if you voted Julie out here, next week you go in 3-3 with 3 original Rebas and then Katura, Jake, and Emily on the other side, which maybe you still have some wiggle room because Emily is close with Austin and Drew, and you could still have a majority 4-2. But I feel like safest, maybe you keep the 4 intact so you really have the numbers. But I do think next week someone's going to flip, and I don't think all 4 Rebas are making it into the finale. I think one of them is going home next week.
Yeah, I feel like it's hard because for Drew and Austin, I feel like it would have been almost ideal to get rid of Julie this week because then, sure, it's 3-3 Rebas, but you know that Emily isn't going to vote for either of you. So, like, maybe Julie goes home, but you still are going to be able to make it at least another vote. maybe find a way to work with like Katura or Jake to get Emily out after that. Like, I feel like Drew and Austin are the ones who lost the most by Julie not going home this episode. So
And it'll be interesting next week because it's final 6 vote. I think Drew's advantage ends at final 6, so he could leave tribal, not vote, and be safe. Austin's amulet ends at 6, so he would still vote at tribal, but he could be safe. If another person that isn't Austin or Drew win immunity, there's only 3 people up for votes technically, and maybe if Drew does leave and doesn't vote, only 5 people are voting, and maybe someone plays a shot in the dark, even less votes. I feel like it's going to be very tricky final 6 vote depending on how all of these advantages fall and who wins immunity. And I guess that's good that Julie's idol was used because then final 5 seems like there'll be no advantages and hopefully they don't like rehide an idol for final 5.
if they rehide an idol for final 5, I will be all riot.
Bruh, actually it might happen because now 2 idols just went out with Julie's and Bruce's, so maybe they're going to rehide one, which will be a big like FML moment.
Hoy vey. I could also see them like not telling us that an idol is rehidden and not telling us that someone found it until they play it at tribal and then have a whole flashback sequence. So
I just quit.
yeah,
Like, what
me
the
too.
heck?
We retire as Survivor podcasters.
Oh my god, turn off the TV. I was like, this is so bad.
Yeah.
But I'm excited. Final 6 next week, then we go into a regular 3-hour finale with the final 5. The Amazing Race finale is next week, so that will be very, very exciting. A lot of good TV to round out this year of 2023, which is very wild. It's almost 2024.
It's almost 2024, and I guess by then we'll know who the next winner of Survivor is. So that'll be really exciting.
Yeah, so thank you all so much for watching. If you liked this episode, definitely let us know in the comments below. Do you think, from everyone's point of view, who made the right move and who made the wrong move? Because I think there are arguments for every different person on the island about where they should have went this vote, which makes it a very, very fun episode. So thank you all. And Alyssa, anything else?
Nope, that's all I gotta say. We'll see you guys next week with another podcast.